Welcome to the Noah Media Podcast, where we bring you the stories, insights, and perspectives that shape our world. I'm your host, Ebony, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. Whether you're looking for your daily dose of inspiration, a fresh perspective on the news, or a deeper understanding of the world around you, you've come to the right place. So get comfortable, and let's get started. Today, we're diving into a story that sounds like it's ripped straight from a political thriller. It involves the president, the Supreme Court, and a high-stakes battle over billions of dollars and the very balance of power in the United States. The headline that caught our eye this week was, "Supreme Court cannot stop all of Trump's tariffs. Deal with it," officials say. It's a bold statement, and it raises a huge question. How can the highest court in the land be powerless to stop a president's economic policies? Exactly. And that deal with it attitude from officials? That tells you there's a deeper story here. This isn't just about trade or economics. It's about power, precedent, and what it means for the future of the presidency. So let's break it down. What is this Supreme Court case actually about? At its heart, it's about a law from 1977 called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This law gives the president broad powers to regulate the economy during a national emergency. Emergency being the key word there. IEPA has been used before, right? For things like sanctions against hostile nations. Precisely. It's a tool for foreign policy crises. But President Trump has started using it in a way no other president has. He's declared a national emergency over the U.S. trade deficit, and also at one point, fentanyl trafficking. That seems like a stretch. The U.S. has had a trade deficit for almost 50 years. Calling it a sudden emergency feels like a creative interpretation of the word. That's exactly what the challengers in this case are arguing. Businesses and even members of Congress are saying the president is abusing this emergency power to do something the Constitution explicitly gives to Congress, the power to set tariffs and taxes. So it's a classic separation of powers fight. The president using a law in a novel way, and the other branches pushing back. But the headline says the Supreme Court can't stop him. Why not? Well, that's where the deal with it part of the story comes in. The administration's argument is twofold. First, they claim that their declaration of an emergency is basically unreviewable by the courts. They're saying if we say it's an emergency, it's an emergency. End of story. That's a bold claim. It essentially puts the president's emergency declarations beyond legal challenge. It's a massive claim, and it's what makes this case so dramatic. But the second part of their argument is even more pragmatic. They're essentially saying even if you strike this down, we have other ways to do this. Segment 2, the legal nitty-gritty of president's emergency. Let's get into that a bit more because this is where the drama really unfolds. The IEEPA law itself doesn't even mention the word tariffs, does it? Not once. It talks about regulating economic transactions. The administration is arguing that tariffs are a form of regulation. Opponents say that's twisting the law to bypass Congress. They argue that if Congress wanted to give the president the power to impose tariffs under IEEPA, they would have written the word tariffs in the law. And this isn't just a theoretical legal debate. Trump has used this power to impose sweeping tariffs on goods from around the world. From China to Canada to the European Union, he announced tariffs on a Sunday that went into effect on a Wednesday. That's a huge shock to the system for businesses. And that's the core of the business complaint. It's not just the cost of the tariffs, it's the unpredictability. How can you run a business when the president can unilaterally impose a massive new tax on your supply chain with just a few days' notice? So, the administration is essentially creating its own economic policy separate from Congress. And they're doing it by declaring emergencies that, to many, don't seem like emergencies at all. The Brennan Center for Justice pointed out that Trump declared 9 national emergencies in his first 9 months in office. That's more than any other president. It's a pattern of governing by emergency. And that's what has so many legal scholars worried. If the Supreme Court sides with the administration on this, it could set a precedent for future presidents to use emergency powers to act unilaterally on all sorts of issues, from climate change to technology regulation, completely bypassing Congress. So let's talk about the administration's backup plan. This is the deal with it part of the headline. What happens if the Supreme Court does rule against them on the IEPA? This is where it gets interesting. Treasury Secretary basically said, okay, fine. If you take away this tool, we'll just use another one. He pointed to two other laws, Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, which allows for 15% tariffs for 150 days to deal with trade imbalances, and Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, which allows for tariffs of up to 50% on countries that discriminate against U.S. commerce. So, even if they lose this battle, they might not lose the war. They have other statutes they can use to impose tariffs. This is why the headline says the Supreme Court can't stop all of the tariffs. Exactly. The IEPA is the administration's preferred tool because it's fast, flexible, and, they argue, not subject to judicial review. The other laws have more procedural hurdles. They require more formal notices and have time limits. But they still give the president a lot of power to impose tariffs without a new vote from Congress. So, for businesses, the message is clear. Tariffs are here to stay one way or another. As one trade lawyer put it, this administration is committed to tariffs as a cornerstone of economic policy, and companies and industries should plan accordingly. The economic fallout. Let's talk about the real-world impact of all this. What has the economic fallout been from these tariffs? It's been significant. The Tax Foundation estimates that the tariffs will reduce U.S. GDP by 0.6% and will cost global businesses over $1 trillion this year alone. And most of that cost is being passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. So we're all paying for this, whether we realize it or not. Yes, and the Penn Wharton budget model put it in stark terms. They said the tariffs are the equivalent of raising the corporate income tax rate from 21% to 36%. That's a massive tax hike on American businesses. And what about the global markets? How have they reacted to all this uncertainty? It's been a roller coaster. Markets have been whipsawed by the tariff drama. One day, the president threatens new tariffs and markets tumble. The next day, there's a rumor of a deal and they rally. It's created a huge amount of volatility and made it very difficult for businesses to make long-term plans. What's next? The Supreme Court's dilemma. So it all comes down to the 9 justices on the Supreme Court. What are the possible outcomes here? The court has a few options. They could issue a broad ruling that IEPA simply doesn't authorize tariffs under any circumstances. That would be a major blow to the administration and a strong reaffirmation of Congress's power. Or they could rule more narrowly, saying that while IEPA could be used for tariffs in a real emergency, a long-standing trade deficit doesn't count. Right. And then there's the most dangerous possibility. From a separation of powers perspective, the court could side with the administration and say that the president has broad authority to declare emergencies and that the courts can't second-guess that decision. That would be a huge shift of power to the executive branch. The court has a 6-3 conservative majority, with 3 justices appointed by Trump himself. They've shown deference to him in the past, but they've also shown a willingness to strike down what they see as executive overreach, like they did with the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan. It's a tough one to predict, but whatever they decide, this case will have profound implications for the balance of power in Washington for years to come. It forces us to ask a fundamental question. In an increasingly complex and fast-moving world, how much power should we give to the president to act alone without the checks and balances of Congress? It's a question with no easy answers, and it's a story we'll be following closely. That's all the time we have for today on The Breakdown. Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time as we continue to explore the stories shaping our world.